Look at their budget and what they're proposing. Romney wants to he said in the first 100 days, he's going to let the big banks once again write their own rules. Unchain Wall Street. They're going to put you all back in chains.
Here to join me to talk about this, what can only be called an inflammatory attack, is assistant editorial page editor James Freeman. James, welcome.
Thanks, Brian.
So today, Obama campaign spokeswoman Stephanie Cutter said the president doesn't really have a problem with these remarks, these in chains remarks. Should he?
Well, I guess given the recent history here, we've heard from the Obama camp that Mitt Romney is a felon, that he killed a guy's wife. So enslaving all of us, putting us in chains, it kind of seems more or less expected now. Amazing.
And it was interesting, too, to see correspondents like Andrea Mitchell, not necessarily usually too tough on the Democrats, pushing back there.
Well, I don't know where they take it from here. I mean, what are they going to say once they're in the heat of the fall campaign?
Okay, well, let's talk facts. We've heard this time and time again out of the campaign. The banks caused the financial crisis. They're to blame. Is that true?
Well, I think you look at really government roots in terms of how did we get to 2008, and it's always popular when things go wrong to say greed caused it, as if this suddenly pops up on the landscape. You know, greed is a part of the financial markets and a part of life all the time. But you look at this government mania in the early part of the 2000s and the 90s, really, it began to get everyone into a house. And then you look at the Federal Reserve pushing money out there, pushing credit out there. A lot of government fingerprints on this disaster.
James, now let's talk about the one fact that the vice president today didn't talk about, and that the president never talks about, which is the voting record of the president when he was a senator. Was he for reforming these institutions that, as you say,
no, he was
supercharged the crisis?
He was not for reforming the two housing giants, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, really at the heart of the mortgage crisis. Meanwhile, Paul Ryan, it turns out, was an early backer of reform. If people had listened to him, might have saved us billions of dollars. But also, Mr. Obama signed on to this effort to support, this is getting a little technical, but it was known as the Consolidated Supervisory Program at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Basically, it was the biggest regulatory disaster of the pre-crisis era. This is the process that was regulating Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. And so the president seems to like to go back to that pre-crisis history. I don't think it's going to be very kind to him if people really study it.
Now, James, you have experience at the SEC, so you know of whence you speak when it comes to regulation. Yeah. But let's talk about that other facet of this, as you say, complicated topic, SEC regulation when the president was in the Senate. There's also his relationship with Goldman Sachs, which, as I understand it, was a big proponent of getting the SEC on board to keep the status quo.
He was on Goldman's side on that one. This is it's kind of interesting because the president, to this point, he's gotten away with it's a staple of every campaign speech that the mess that happened in the Bush years happened because taxes were cut and banks were allowed to make up their own rules. And of course, that's a fantasy. Sarbanes-Oxley during the Bush years, there was a vast explosion of financial regulation. So I think as those two myths are challenged in this campaign, it's going to create a problem for the president. He's going to need a new campaign speech, among other things.
James, what also about the employees of the Obama administration that helped cause the crisis? I mean, it's not as if the president, when he got into office, said, well, now I get it. Now we have to reform. Now we have to get these people out of the system.
Yeah,
let's talk about some of those folks.
There was the promise that lobbyists were not going to be part of his administration. I seem to recall that from the campaign, the transition period. Tom Donilon, among others, senior official in the Obama administration, had been a lobbyist for Fannie Mae. And so there's a history there. Also, of course, during his campaign, Jim Johnson, really the architect of Fannie Mae, was leading the vice presidential search for candidate Obama until this was brought to light. And that was something of an embarrassment, had to shove Mr. Johnson aside. But yeah, the pre-crisis history, what you see is you see Mitt Romney not involved in the federal government, and then you see Paul Ryan, an early voice in the wilderness, saying, "Don't let these housing monsters get out of control." And on the Obama-Biden ticket, it's really not a very good history for them.
Okay, well, thank you, James. James Freeman,
Thanks, Mary.
assistant editorial page editor with the Wall Street Journal.